Now, it's not the first time that I've said this, and it's probably not going to be the last, but one of the things I love about Sublime Text is how configurable it is. From its very flexible preferences and key binding system, all the way down to its plugin API that allows you to extend its very functionality, Sublime is engineered to give you top speed and the ability to make it work the way you want it to work. And in honor of it being Devember, and in particular the first video on the channel during Devember, I thought I'd show you a very simple, quick little plugin that is very simple yet very powerful and is a great way to perhaps extend your usage of Sublime Text. Hello, fellow Sublime Text fanatics. Odette Nerd here, and welcome to this first Devember 2019 video for the channel. What the heck is Devember, you ask? We will cover that in just a second, but first, I'd like to remind you that your continued support is what makes creation of the videos on this channel possible. I couldn't do it without the support of people out there telling me that they would like to see these videos, and the best way you can do that is use those buttons down below to thumb, subscribe, and share as you deem appropriate if you're getting any value out of these videos. And of course, you can always leave questions, comments, and suggestions for other video topics you'd like me to cover in the future down in the comment section below the video or on Twitter at Odette Nerd as well. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Devember, there is a link down in the description of the video. You can look to get a whole bunch more information, but very simply, Devember is just an excuse to code because coding is fun. We like to get the message out there that anybody and everybody can be writing code, and it's a great thing to do. It is a lot of fun, and in a world where things are getting increasingly more computerized, even my toaster oven has a computer in it that's probably more powerful than the very first computer I had when I was a kid. Knowing a little bit about coding can really go a long way in helping you understand the world that we live in. And for that reason, I thought that for this first video in Devember of this particular year, that the topic we would cover is a very simple plugin in Sublime Text, just to show that if there is functionality in Sublime that you think is missing, you can add it, and sometimes it may not be nearly as complicated as you think that it might be. So let's go ahead and jump on in. Now, in the previous video on the channel, we've talked all about the ways that you can configure Sublime Text, starting with the base global application default configuration and how you can override that based on the project that you're working on or on the type of file that you happen to be working on. And that's a great way to have things set up the way you want. But not all settings are quite as cut and dry in that. Sometimes the value of a setting that you need doesn't depend on the project that you're working on or the type of file it is, but what you're doing at that particular time. And when you run into that sort of situation, you might find yourself jumping up to the menu to do something like change where the rulers are or change where the word wrap is on or off and things of that nature. And as it turns out, it is in fact possible for you to modify those settings on the fly by the way of key bindings. And we have some examples of that here. Now, the two examples we're thinking of specifically here are word wrap and font size. Now, word wrap, you might think, yeah, I always want word wrap on, or no, I never want word wrap on. Or I hardly ever want word wrap on, but I would like it to be turned on in a markdown file because markdown files are sometimes written that way. And that's great, and you can do that without key bindings. But then you run into that text file that was written by your friend Bob, and Bob doesn't like pressing the enter key, and you don't have word wrap turned on by default, and you open up his file, and Bob's file is one big long line. Then you got to go up to the menu and fiddle that particular setting. And font size. Now, again, normally a font size, you would think, yeah, this is the font size that I want. I can see things. But there are situations where you might want to change the font size up. For example, if you are working in a pair programming environment where you have another person sitting beside you, you might need to kick the font size up a little bit so the person next to you can see the code a little bit better while you're doing your pair programming or while a user is, someone else is helping you debug your code. And if you happen to be doing a presentation, you might want an even bigger font size as well for that. And you might want to be able to toggle between those on the fly. And Sublime kind of has us covered in this regard because there are some commands that we can use, and we can see examples of them here. Now, the first the first command we might be interested in here is the toggle setting command. And as we can see here, the toggle setting command takes a single argument, which is the name of a setting, and it just flips the value of that setting between true true and false. If the value is false, it becomes true. If the value is true, it becomes false. This only works for settings that can be turned on and off, that have that true and false value. And these are an example of view-specific settings. If you remember from the video that I referenced previously on configuration, this particular command and the command we're about to talk about here only modify the settings for the particular tab that you run them in. It's not application-wide. So they will persist in that tab until you close the file. So you could use this, for example, as we have here, to be able to toggle word wrap on and off very quickly by way of the keyboard. So if we jumped over to this file, oh, this file is very terrible. It is super long. But I can just press a key and get myself into word wrap mode and be able to read this. And I didn't have to go up to the menu and skip along or anything like that. I can just press a key and immediately flip this back and forth the way I would like to be able to watch this file. And the next command we're going to talk about here is the set setting command. Now, where the toggle setting command can only flip the value of a Boolean setting between whatever it's currently set to and its opposite, the set setting command allows you to set a specific setting to a specific size. And again, this is a view specific setting. This will only affect the tab that is currently active. So as you can see here, this particular command takes two arguments: the setting that you would like to set and the value you'd like to give it. And using this, we can change the font size between the font size I normally use in these videos, which is 9, to a slightly larger size if we were doing pair programming, and the big presentation size if we were doing something like that. And if we were to jump over to here, we can see this is the standard font size. If I push the key, the first key, I end up with a ridiculously big font, great for projecting. I can press the next key and bring that down a little bit just to help somebody who's standing behind me point out the horrible error in my code for me. And then I can press a key and jump it back to the value that it was when I originally started. And I can, jump between these particular items as strictly necessary. Now, this is cool, but it seems a little bulky that if you have these three font sizes, you have to have three different key bindings to be able to swap between them. Now, if you watch the previous videos, you might immediately be thinking, I could use a context in my key binding to be able to use the same key and the same command, but slightly different arguments, and flip the font size that way. And that is an awesome idea if you thought of it, but it doesn't quite work because Sublime doesn't have a context built in that allows you to check the value of arbitrary settings. The only context it has is the settings setting, which we saw in that video on contexts and how they work, and it only tests the value of Boolean settings. So that wouldn't work here, and you do indeed have to have multiple keys. Or do you? Because we do have the ability to add plugins to Sublime, so we could add pretty much any command we want. Here's the plugin we could use to solve this very problem. As we can see, it's not a very complicated plugin at all. It doesn't take a lot of complicated code in a lot of cases to do the thing that you would like to be able to do. Sublime gives us the building blocks that we need, kind of like Lego. You just have to be able to click them together. And if you're interested in this plugin, you don't have to worry about transcribing it or anything like that. Check down in the description of the video. There's a link to the GitHub repository for this command. But very simply, this implements a new command called toggle settings ext, or for extended, and it takes the setting that you would like to set, just like the set setting command does, and it also takes a list of options, and it just cycles between the options that you give it based on the value that it currently has. So with this plugin, we don't need this long sequence of three different key bindings. We could just replace them with one simple binding like this. For here, I've used Control-Alt-P for presentation. It's using our new toggle settings extended command. And as we can see, we've given it a font size, and we've given it three options for the font size, 9, 12, and 20, just like we did previously. And if I was to jump over here, by pressing that key, a single key is now toggling between all of these things, making it very easy to flip between font sizes as you need them, which is a lot nicer than using the Control plus and minus keys, or using the Control and the mouse wheel click to zoom the font size. It could be tricky to get it back to the point where it originally was. Now, this is just two quick examples of why this sort of thing could be handy. This plugin was originally written because the user wanted to be able to toggle the draw white space option between showing all white space and showing no white space, depending on what they were doing. And this makes that ridiculously easy to do. You could also use this for other settings as well. For example, not just turning word wrap on and off, but changing the wrap width as well, or toggling between multiple different rulers depending on what file you're actually editing at the particular moment. The possibilities for this are really endless. As we can see here, plugins don't have to be big, complicated pieces of text. They can be very short, very simple, and still have an enormous impact on your usage of Sublime and your ability to get your work done faster and easier. And I hope that this is going to be helpful to you and that it maybe sparks an interest in you to be interested in creating packages yourself, or at least start thinking about the possibilities that you have as a Sublime Text user. And if that is the case and you found the video helpful, then please do use those buttons down below to thumb, subscribe, and share as you deem appropriate, because your continued support is what makes videos on the channel possible. And please remember, you can always leave questions, comments, suggestions for other topics down in the comments section of this video, or ping me on Twitter at ODATNerd. And if this video did whet your appetite and curiosity for what is possible in the wonderful world of plugin creation and package creation in Sublime, then good news, because starting sometime in the new year, videos on the channel are going to start including more on that very topic: how to create plugins, how all of the parts work, and all of that great stuff. So make sure you subscribe if you're interested in that topic as well. But until those videos in the future and the next video coming up, this is ODAT Nerd asking you to please have a sublime day.